bells of the Dragon Palace echoed across the Mountain Kingdom as thousands of nobles gathered beneath the enormous crimson banners of House Valtheris. It was the day of binding, the sacred ceremony, where the Dragon King renewed his spiritual connection with the ancient beast that protected the kingdom for generations. No commoner was allowed near the ceremonial hall, especially not servants. Yet Lyra moved silently through the crowd with lowered eyes, carrying silver trays of glowing dragon incense toward the altar. At 19 years old, she had spent her entire life inside the palace, as little more than invisible furniture. The nobles called her the Ash Girl because of the strange silver mark hidden beneath her collarbone and the pale streaks in her dark hair. Most believed she was cursed. Others believed she should have died years ago. Lyra herself believed nothing anymore. "Keep your head down," another servant whispered nervously. "If the Dragon King notices you, you're dead." At the center of the enormous ceremonial chamber stood the Dragon King himself, Galdraven Felteris, the ruler of the Dragon Kingdom. Tall, merciless, untouchable. His black ceremonial armor shimmered beneath the firelight, while ancient runes glowed faintly across his skin. Behind him towered the sacred heart beast, an enormous black dragon with glowing golden eyes and wings large enough to darken the entire throne hall. The beast had served only the royal bloodline for over 1,000 years. No one else could approach it. No one else could survive touching it. The high priest raised his staff toward the crowd. "Bow before the heart beast of the Dragon King." Every person in the chamber dropped to their knees. Every person except Lyra. One of the incense chains snapped suddenly beside her. The burning silver bowl crashed across the marble floor. Gasps erupted through the hall. Lyra stumbled forward instinctively, trying to catch it before the sacred flames touched the altar. Then, her hand brushed against the dragon. The world stopped. A violent pulse exploded through the chamber. The black dragon's eyes widened instantly. Golden fire burst from beneath its scales. The nobles screamed as the ancient beast suddenly tore free from the ceremonial chains surrounding the altar. "Protect the king!" soldiers shouted. The Dragon King reached for his sword, but the dragon ignored him completely. Instead, the massive creature lowered its enormous head beside the terrified servant girl. Then it wrapped its gigantic body protectively around her. The entire palace fell silent. Kael stared in disbelief as the heart beast growled at him. For the first time in history, the sacred dragon had turned against its master. Lyra trembled beneath the beast's glowing wings, unable to breathe as ancient energy burned through her veins. Strange silver symbols appeared briefly across her skin before disappearing again beneath her sleeves. The high priest's face turned pale with horror. "No," he whispered. The old man stumbled backward. "That mark." The Dragon King slowly raised his eyes toward Lyra. For the first time, real fury appeared in his expression. "You?" he said coldly. The dragon growled louder instantly. Flames erupted across the throne room walls. Kael's jaw tightened. The beast was defending her. The same beast that had slaughtered armies for him. The same creature that obeyed no one, now protecting a servant girl. The high priest dropped to his knees in terror. "The prophecy," he whispered shakily. "The celestial bloodline has returned." The entire chamber erupted into panic. Some nobles fled. Others screamed for the guards to kill her immediately. But the dragon tightened around Lyra possessively, its glowing eyes fixed on the Dragon King himself. And deep beneath the palace, ancient dragons sleeping beneath the mountain slowly began to awaken. Chaos consumed the throne hall as terrified nobles pushed toward the exits, desperate to escape the sacred beast's growing rage. Massive flames crawled across the marble pillars, while the black dragon's wings spread wide above Lyra, like a shield forged from darkness itself. No one dared move closer, not even the royal guards. The Dragon King stood motionless at the center of the destruction, his golden eyes locked on the frightened servant girl hidden beneath his beast. For the first time in years, Kael felt something dangerous rising inside him. Fear, not fear of death, fear of losing control. "Your Majesty," one of the generals whispered carefully, "give the order, and we'll kill her now." The heart beast instantly released a thunderous roar that shook the entire palace. Every torch exploded. Windows shattered across the ceremonial chamber. The general collapsed backward in terror as the dragon's glowing eyes narrowed murderously. Kael slowly lifted one hand, stopping his soldiers before a massacre began. The beast had chosen her. If they attacked the girl, the dragon would slaughter everyone inside the palace, including him. Lyra's breathing trembled as she remained frozen beneath the enormous creature. She could feel its warmth surrounding her, strangely gentle despite its terrifying size. Ancient energy pulsed through her veins every time the dragon touched her skin. Then, suddenly, images exploded inside her mind. A sky filled with silver dragons, a burning kingdom, a woman crowned in celestial fire, standing beside an ancient throne, and mountains collapsing beneath black flames. Lyra gasped painfully. As the visions vanished, the dragon lowered its massive head beside her, as if sensing her pain. The high priest stared at her with horror. "She carries the blood," he whispered weakly. Kael finally stepped forward. The beast growled instantly. The Dragon King stopped only a few feet away, his expression colder than winter itself. "Who are you?" he demanded. Lyra lowered her eyes immediately. I'm nobody, Your Majesty." The dragon rumbled angrily. Kael noticed it immediately. The creature disliked hearing her speak that way about herself. "Interesting." The high priest suddenly grabbed Kael's arm desperately. "Your Majesty, she cannot remain alive," the old man whispered urgently. "The prophecy clearly warned us." Kael's gaze darkened. "What prophecy?" The priest hesitated. For several seconds, only the dragon's breathing echoed through the ruined hall. Then the old man spoke quietly. "When the celestial bloodline returns, the heart beast will abandon the false king." The entire room became silent again. Kael's expression hardened instantly. False king. No one had ever dared use those words near the throne. "The girl carries the blood of the ancient celestial dragon clan," the priest continued nervously. "The original rulers of this kingdom before your ancestors destroyed them centuries ago." Lyra's eyes widened in shock. "Destroyed?" Kael's voice turned deadly calm. "You're telling me this servant belongs to a dead royal bloodline?" The high priest swallowed hard. "The prophecy says a daughter of celestial blood will either save the dragon kingdom or burn it to ash." At those words, every noble in the chamber slowly looked toward Lyra with growing fear. Not disgust, not pity. Fear. Real fear. Lyra stepped backward instinctively. "I don't understand," she whispered shakily. "I'm just a servant." But deep down, something felt wrong. Because ever since childhood, strange things had followed her. Animals obeyed her without reason. Silver fire sometimes appeared around her hands during nightmares. And every full moon, she heard dragons screaming beneath the mountains. The Dragon King studied her carefully. She looked terrified, confused, weak. Nothing about her resembled the monster described in the prophecy. Yet his heart beast had abandoned him for her, without hesitation. That alone made her dangerous. Suddenly, the ground beneath the palace trembled violently. A deep roar echoed from somewhere far below the mountain. Then another answered it, and another. The high priest's face lost all color. "The buried dragons," he whispered. Kael's eyes narrowed instantly. Impossible. The ancient dragons beneath the kingdom had slept for over 1,000 years. Nothing could awaken them, unless... His gaze snapped toward Lyra. The black dragon wrapped tighter around her protectively. The answer was standing directly in front of him. At that exact moment, the palace doors burst open. A blood-covered soldier stumbled into the chamber. "Your Majesty," he shouted desperately. "The dragon tombs are opening." Panic erupted again. The dead dragons are waking up. Outside the palace windows, enormous shadows began moving beneath the mountains themselves. And somewhere deep within the darkness below the kingdom, something ancient opened its eyes. The entire palace shook as another monstrous roar thundered from beneath the kingdom. Cracks spread violently across the marble floor, while dust rained from the ceiling of the ceremonial hall. Outside the towering palace windows, the mountains surrounding the Dragon Kingdom trembled like living creatures waking from a 1,000-year nightmare. Fear spread across every noble face. Even the royal guards looked pale now, because everyone in the kingdom knew the stories. Long ago, before the Dragon Kings ruled the land, the Celestial Dragon Clan commanded hundreds of ancient dragons powerful enough to erase entire armies from existence. After the Great War, the surviving beasts were sealed beneath the mountains forever. Or so history claimed. Now the dead dragons were waking up, and they were waking because of her. Lyra backed away slowly, overwhelmed by the terrified stares surrounding her. She could barely breathe beneath the pressure crushing the room. "I didn't do anything," she whispered. But the moment the words left her mouth, silver light flickered briefly beneath her skin again. The high priest saw it immediately. "So it's true," he murmured in horror. Kyle's eyes never left her. For some reason, the closer the girl stood to the heartbeast, the stronger the ancient energy inside the chamber became. The dragon itself seemed calmer near her, almost protective in a strangely possessive way. That only made the king more furious. The heart beast belonged to him, not her. For years, Kale had bled beside that creature in war. He had built his kingdom with its power. He had sacrificed everything to maintain control of the throne. Yet now the dragon looked at the servant girl with more loyalty than it had ever shown him. Kale's jaw tightened dangerously. "Take her to the northern tower," he ordered coldly. The room froze. No one moved, because the dragon immediately released another threatening growl. Its enormous claws dug into the marble floor as flames escaped between its teeth. The guards hesitated fearfully. Kale stepped closer. "Enough," he commanded the beast. For the first time in centuries, the heart beast ignored a direct royal order. The dragon moved in front of Lyra instead, protecting her from him. Shock spread across the throne hall again. Kyle's expression darkened. The betrayal burned deeper than he wanted to admit. Before anyone could react further, another violent tremor shook the palace. This time, the roar beneath the mountain sounded much closer. Then came the screams. Everyone turned toward the windows. Far below the palace, enormous stone doors built into the mountainside were slowly opening. Ancient chains thicker than castle towers snapped apart, one by one, while black smoke poured from the dragon tombs beneath the kingdom. Citizens flooded the streets in panic. Some prayed. Others tried to flee the city entirely. Then suddenly, a massive claw burst through the side of the mountain. The entire kingdom screamed. An ancient dragon slowly pulled itself from the darkness below the earth. Its scales were gray like dead stone, and enormous chains still hung from its body as glowing red eyes opened for the first time in 1,000 years. Another roar answered it from beneath the mountain. Then another. The dragon tombs were opening completely. Kael's generals immediately dropped to one knee. "Your Majesty, we must evacuate the capital now." But Kael barely heard them, because something even worse had just happened. The ancient dragon outside was not attacking the city. It was bowing, slowly. The colossal beast lowered its head toward the palace tower where Lyra stood. Toward her, the high priest collapsed to his knees in terror. The dragons recognized her bloodline. Lyra stared at the enormous creature in disbelief as strange warmth spread through her chest again. The silver mark beneath her collarbone burned painfully now, pulsing brighter beneath her skin. Then she heard it. A voice, ancien, powerful, inside her mind. "You have returned. Celestial heir." Lyra gasped and grabbed her head. The black heart beast instantly pressed itself protectively against her side. Kael noticed everything. The connection, the voices, the dragons awakening for her. And for the first time, the Dragon King realized the prophecy might be far worse than anyone imagined. Because if the ancient dragons truly obeyed her, then the servant girl standing before him possessed enough power to destroy the entire kingdom. Suddenly, the palace doors burst open once more. A wounded knight stumbled inside, covered in blood. "Your Majesty," he shouted desperately. "The southern villages are burning." Kyle's eyes sharpened instantly. What happened? The knight's face trembled with terror. One of the awakened dragons attacked the border. Silence swallowed the room. Then the knight whispered the words that changed everything. It kept screaming one name before the massacre began. Slowly, everyone turned toward Lyra. The knight swallowed hard. It was calling for its queen. Silence consumed the throne hall after the knight's final words. It was calling for its queen. The sentence echoed through the chamber like a curse. Every noble slowly stepped farther away from Lyra, as if her mere presence could summon death itself. Fear poisoned the air, while distant dragon roars continued shaking the mountains beyond the palace walls. Lyra stood frozen beneath the heartbeast's enormous shadow, unable to process what was happening around her. Queen, how could that be possible? She was nobody, a servant, an orphan abandoned at the palace gates as a child. Yet the dragons were waking for her, calling for her, protecting her. The silver mark beneath her collarbone suddenly burned hotter than before. Pain shot through her chest violently, forcing her to stumble forward. The black heart beast instantly caught her with one massive claw before she could hit the floor. Kyle watched the scene with darkening eyes. The beast had never shown gentleness to anyone before, not even him. "Your Majesty," the high priest whispered urgently. "She must be sealed immediately before more dragons awaken." Another roar thundered outside. This one sounded much closer. The palace windows exploded inward as a powerful gust of wind slammed through the throne room. Nobles screamed and dropped to the ground, while enormous shadows circled above the capital city. The awakened dragons were coming. Kyle slowly drew the black sword hanging at his side. Instantly, every guard in the chamber followed him. The heartbeast's eyes narrowed dangerously. Lyra's breath caught in panic. "You're going to kill me," she whispered. Kale's voice remained cold. "If I wanted you dead, servant, you'd already be ashes." The answer should have comforted her. Instead, it terrified her more, because she could see the truth in his eyes now. The Dragon King didn't know whether to destroy her or protect her, and that uncertainty was dangerous. Suddenly, another painful vision exploded inside Lyra's mind. A battlefield, covered in dragon fire. The sky split apart by silver lightning. An enormous celestial dragon descending from the heavens while humans burned below. Then, she saw herself standing before thousands of kneeling dragons, with glowing silver wings spreading behind her. Beside her stood a man covered in blood, the Dragon King. But in the vision, Kale was dying. Lyra gasped violently as the vision vanished. The heart beast growled anxiously beside her. Kyle stepped forward immediately. "What did you see?" Lyra stared at him fearfully. I don't know." But she did know. The vision felt too real. And somehow, deep inside her soul, she understood something horrifying. The future surrounding the Dragon Kingdom was soaked in blood. Before Kale could question her further, the palace doors burst open again. This time, it was not soldiers entering. It was Queen Seraphine, the Dragon King's fiancée, the future queen of the kingdom. She entered the throne hall surrounded by royal guards, her silver gown flowing behind her like moonlight. Beautiful and elegant, Seraphine had spent years preparing to become Kale's queen. Then she saw the heart beast wrapped around another woman. Shock twisted instantly into fury. "What is this?" she demanded. No one answered. Seraphine's eyes landed on Lyra, on the dragon protecting her, then on Kale himself. "You allowed a servant near the sacred beast?" she asked coldly. Kale remained silent. The high priest finally spoke shakily. "My queen, the beast chose her." The entire room tensed. Seraphine slowly looked back toward Lyra. Then she laughed, softly. A cruel laugh. "That's impossible." As she stepped closer, the heart beast immediately bared its enormous fangs at her. The future queen froze. The dragon had never threatened her before. Its hatred was obvious now. Seraphine's face darkened with humiliation. "She's dangerous," she snapped. Kill her before she destroys the kingdom. But before anyone could move, the palace trembled again. Then came a deafening roar directly above them. Everyone looked upward in horror. An enormous silver dragon descended from the storm clouds outside the palace. Unlike the others, this dragon was not covered in chains. Its scales glowed like moonlight itself. Ancient, royal, powerful, beyond imagination. The creature landed atop the palace towers with enough force to crack the stone beneath it. Then the silver dragon lowered its gigantic head toward one person only, Lyra. The entire city watched in terror as the ancient creature spoke in a voice that shook the heavens. "Kneel before your true queen." Every dragon surrounding the capital roared at once, and for the first time in centuries, the Dragon Kingdom bowed to someone other than its king. The moment the silver dragon spoke, the entire capital descended into chaos. Citizens flooded the streets in panic, while nobles inside the throne hall collapsed to their knees instinctively. Some covered their ears. Others prayed desperately to the ancient gods, because dragons did not kneel. Dragons conquered. Yet now, every awakened beast circling the kingdom had lowered itself before a servant girl. Before Lyra, the enormous silver dragon perched atop the palace, stared directly at her with glowing celestial eyes older than the kingdom itself. "Kneel before your true queen." Its voice echoed through the mountains like divine judgment. Lyra stepped backward in horror. "No," she whispered shakily. "You're wrong." But deep inside her chest, something ancient had already awakened. The silver mark beneath her collarbone spread slowly across her skin like glowing branches of moonlight. Energy pulsed violently through her veins while silver fire flickered around her trembling hands. The high priest looked ready to faint. "The Celestial Queen," he whispered. Queen Seraphine's face twisted with rage. "No," she snapped sharply. "This girl is a fraud." The future queen marched toward Lyra furiously, despite the heartbeast's warning growls. "She's a servant," Seraphine shouted to the terrified nobles. "An orphan pulled from the streets." But before she could reach Lyra, the silver dragon outside released a thunderous roar. The entire palace shook violently. Seraphine froze instantly, as ancient pressure crushed the throne hall like an invisible storm. Even the royal guards struggled to breathe beneath the dragon's overwhelming power. The message was clear. "Touch the girl and die." Kale's expression darkened further. Everything was spiraling beyond his control. For years he had ruled through strength, fear, and absolute authority. Entire kingdoms trembled before him, but now his dragons obeyed another. And the worst part? Somewhere deep inside himself, Kale could already feel the kingdom changing. The people were beginning to look at Lyra differently. Not with disgust, not with pity, with hope. That frightened him more than the dragons. Suddenly, another memory surfaced inside Lyra's mind. This time, the vision was clearer. A woman holding a newborn child beneath a sky filled with silver dragons. The woman was crying. "Hide her," she whispered desperately. "If the royal family finds her, they'll kill her." Then flames consumed everything. Soldiers wearing the Dragon King's crest slaughtered people across a burning temple, while dragons screamed overhead. A man covered in black armor drove his sword through the heart of a silver-haired king. The Celestial Dragon Clan, massacred, destroyed by the royal bloodline. Lyra gasped painfully as the vision ended. Tears filled her eyes. Kyle immediately noticed. "What did you see?" he demanded. Lyra looked at him with trembling fear. "Your family murdered mine." The throne hall fell silent. Even Kyle froze. The high priest closed his eyes in despair, because everyone knew the ancient rumors were true. The current Dragon Kings had built their throne upon the ashes of the Celestial Clan centuries ago, but the surviving records were forbidden, erased from history. Queen Seraphine immediately stepped forward. "She's lying," she said sharply. But the old priest slowly lowered his head. "No," he admitted quietly. "The ancient royal bloodline destroyed the celestial dragons during the War of Ashes." Shock spread through the chamber. Kale's jaw tightened dangerously. You knew? The truth was sealed to prevent civil war, the priest answered weakly. The celestial clan could command dragons directly. The ancient kings feared them. Lyra's heart pounded violently. All her life, she had believed she was nothing. Now she discovered her bloodline had once ruled dragons themselves, and the current royal family exterminated them. The heart beast gently lowered its massive head beside her again, almost as if mourning her pain. Kyle noticed the gesture. For some reason, guilt stirred uncomfortably inside his chest, a feeling he despised. Before anyone could speak further, screams erupted from outside the palace. One of the guards rushed toward the shattered windows in terror. "Your Majesty." Kale turned sharply. The guard's face had gone completely pale. The northern gate. Beyond the palace walls, thousands of citizens were suddenly kneeling in the streets. Not to their king, to Lyra. The awakened dragons circled above the city, while silver flames illuminated the darkening sky. One by one, the people of the kingdom slowly lowered their heads before the servant girl. And high above them all, the silver dragon spoke once more. "The false dynasty ends tonight." Kyle's eyes narrowed instantly, because at that exact moment, every dragon in the kingdom turned toward the royal palace. The sky above the dragon kingdom turned black with wings. Hundreds of dragons circled the royal palace, while silver fire illuminated the storm clouds overhead. Their roars shook the mountains like thunder from the end of the world itself. Inside the throne hall, panic exploded among the nobles. "They're going to attack the palace. Protect the king. The dragons have betrayed us." Royal guards rushed toward the entrances, while priests began chanting ancient protection spells. But fear had already spread too far, because deep down everyone understood the terrifying truth. The dragons were no longer obeying the throne. They were obeying her. Lyra stood frozen beside the heart beast, as the entire kingdom descended into chaos around her. She never wanted this power, never wanted a throne. Yet the silver fire spreading across her skin felt older than fear itself. Like something buried inside, her blood had finally awakened. Kyle watched her carefully through the madness. The servant girl looked terrified, but the dragons looked at her like destiny. That contradiction unsettled him more than he wanted to admit. Then, suddenly, a deafening explosion shook the palace. The northern tower collapsed outward as one of the awakened dragons crashed directly into the royal fortress. Stone rained across the city while screams erupted below. The war had begun. "Your Majesty," a general shouted desperately. "We need to evacuate immediately." Kale ignored him. His eyes remained fixed on Lyra, because the attacking dragon outside had not harmed a single civilian. It had destroyed only the royal guard towers, only symbols of the crown. The silver dragon atop the palace lowered its enormous head again. "Return the throne," it growled. Queen Seraphine finally snapped. "This creature dares threaten the royal bloodline," she screamed furiously. "Kill them all." She grabbed a fallen spear from one of the guards and hurled it directly toward Lyra. Everything happened instantly. The heart beast moved first. A violent roar exploded through the throne hall as the black dragon shielded Lyra with its massive body. The spear shattered harmlessly against its scales. Then the beast turned toward Seraphine. Its glowing eyes burned with pure murder. The future queen stumbled backward in terror. Kale immediately stepped between them. Enough. The heart beast stopped, but barely. For several tense seconds, the enormous dragon glared at the Dragon King himself as flames curled from its jaws. Then, slowly, the beast lowered its head again beside Lyra, choosing her. Again, KL felt something twist painfully inside his chest. Not anger this time. Loss. The dragon had been beside him since childhood. Through every war, every betrayal, every victory. Yet now, it protected another without hesitation. Lyra noticed the expression in his eyes for the first time. And strangely, she pitied him. That feeling vanished seconds later, when another vision slammed into her mind. This time, she saw the truth. Not history. Memory. A younger Kale standing before his dying father inside a burning throne room years ago. The celestial bloodline must never return, the old king warned weakly. If the dragons find their true queen, our dynasty will fall. Then the dying king handed Kale a small silver dagger. Kill the child. Lyra's breath caught painfully. A baby, hidden beneath silver blankets. Silver eyes. Here, Kale had been sent to kill her. But the vision changed again. Instead of striking the child, the younger Kyle secretly handed the baby to an old servant woman beneath the palace. Hide her, he whispered coldly. If anyone discovers she survived, they'll execute her. The vision shattered instantly. Lyra stared at Kale in shock. You knew, she whispered. The Dragon King's expression darkened. For the first time since meeting him, uncertainty appeared in his eyes. The high priest looked between them in confusion. Knew what? Lyra's voice trembled. He found me when I was a baby. Silence swallowed the room. Kale slowly closed his eyes. Years ago, he should have killed the last celestial heir. Instead, he spared her out of pity, a mistake that now threatened his entire kingdom. Queen Seraphine looked horrified. You protected her? She whispered. Kyle said nothing. That silence was answer enough. Suddenly, the silver dragon outside roared again. But this time, the sound was different. Warning. Every dragon surrounding the palace instantly lifted their heads toward the eastern mountains. Then came a roar so massive the earth itself trembled. The awakened dragons immediately became restless, afraid. Even the heart beast stiffened beside Lyra. Something far worse was coming. Far beyond the mountains, the sky began turning red, and from the darkness beyond the kingdom, an enormous shadow slowly rose into the clouds. The high priest's face turned white with terror. No, he whispered weakly. Kale's eyes narrowed, because he recognized the creature immediately. The Crimson Tyrant, the most ancient dragon ever sealed beneath the world. The destroyer from the prophecy, and it was coming for Lyra. The eastern sky burned red like the world itself had been set on fire. Far beyond the mountains, an enormous shape moved slowly through the storm clouds. Each beat of its wings sent violent shockwaves across the kingdom, while distant villages disappeared beneath walls of crimson flame. The Crimson Tyrant had awakened. Every dragon surrounding the palace immediately lowered themselves in fear. Even the silver celestial dragon stepped backward. Only the heart beast remained beside Lyra, protecting her. The high priest collapsed to his knees, trembling violently. It cannot be free, he whispered. The tyrant was sealed before the first kingdom even existed. Kael's expression hardened. He knew the stories. Every child in the Dragon Kingdom feared them. Long before humans ruled the mountains, the Crimson Tyrant nearly destroyed the entire world. Ancient dragon clans united to imprison the creature beneath the eastern abyss, sacrificing thousands of lives to seal it forever. According to legend, the monster desired only one thing: the heart of the celestial dragon queen. Lyra's blood turned cold. The silver dragon atop the palace suddenly spoke again. It has sensed her awakening. Outside the capital, people screamed as crimson fire spread across the distant forests. Entire mountain peaks trembled, while dark clouds twisted unnaturally above the horizon. The tyrant was approaching quickly. Queen Seraphine pointed at Lyra furiously. "This is her fault," she shouted. "Everything started because of her." Some nobles immediately agreed. "If we surrender the girl, perhaps the monster will spare the kingdom." "Yes, give her to the dragon." Fear transformed the throne hall into chaos again. Lyra stepped backward instinctively, as angry voices rose around her. The heart beast growled threateningly. Kael's hand tightened around his sword. "No one touches her," he said coldly. The room froze instantly. Ave and Lyra stared at him in shock. Queen Seraphine looked furious. "You would protect her after everything she's done?" Kael's golden eyes darkened. "She hasn't destroyed anything yet." Yet. The single word hung heavily in the air, because nobody truly knew whether the prophecy meant salvation or annihilation. Suddenly, another violent vision struck Lyra. This time, She saw the Crimson Tyrant clearly. An enormous dragon with burning crimson scales and eyes like collapsing stars. Entire armies vanished beneath its flames while dragons fell screaming from the sky around it. Then, the monster turned toward her. At last, its voice echoed directly inside her soul. The celestial heart has returned. Lyra gasped violently and collapsed to her knees. Blood dripped from her nose as silver fire burst uncontrollably around her body. The palace floor cracked beneath the pressure exploding from her magic. The dragons outside roared in response. Kale moved toward her immediately. The heart beast allowed it this time. Lyra. Kale grabbed her shoulders firmly. Look at me. It was the first time he had ever spoken her name. Lyra lifted trembling eyes toward him, and for one brief moment, the entire throne hall disappeared. She saw him differently now, not as the cold dragon king, but as the lonely boy from her vision, the prince forced to inherit a throne built on blood and fear. Kyle felt it too. The strange connection between them deepened with every awakening memory. Dangerous, forbidden, impossible. Then suddenly, the silver mark across Lyra's skin blazed brighter than ever before. A burst of celestial energy exploded outward, and enormous silver dragon wings erupted from her back. The throne hall fell completely silent. Lyra stared in horror at the glowing wings spreading behind her. They looked half-formed, made of pure silver fire and ancient magic. The celestial queen was awakening fully. The high priest whispered shakily, "She's transforming." Queen Seraphine backed away in terror. No, Kale couldn't move, because Lyra looked beautiful, not merely human anymore. Something ancient, something divine, and perhaps the most dangerous creature he had ever seen. Outside the palace, every dragon in the kingdom bowed instantly, but far beyond the mountains, the Crimson Tyrant roared again. This time, the monster's voice carried a terrifying promise across the heavens. When the celestial queen rises, the world burns with her. Then, the eastern mountains exploded. A colossal crimson dragon emerged fully from the abyss, large enough to eclipse the moon itself. Citizens across the kingdom screamed in horror. The final seal had broken, and the tyrant was flying directly toward the capital. The Crimson Tyrant crossed the mountains like a living apocalypse. Its wings swallowed the moonlight while rivers of fire spread beneath its shadow. Entire forests vanished in seconds as the ancient dragon flew toward the capital with terrifying speed. Panic consumed the kingdom completely. Citizens flooded the streets, trying to escape while bells rang endlessly across the city towers. Some cried, some prayed, others simply stared at the burning horizon in hopeless terror. Because everyone understood the truth now. No army could stop that creature. Inside the shattered throne hall, the pressure in the air became unbearable. Lyra knelt trembling on the cracked marble floor, while silver wings of celestial fire flickered behind her uncontrollably. She could feel the tyrant calling to her, like an invisible chain pulling directly at her soul. The heart beast pressed protectively against her side, growling toward the eastern sky. Kale stood beside her silently, watching, thinking. For the first time in years, the Dragon King had no clear answer. If Lyra truly was the Celestial Queen, then she possessed enough power to command every dragon alive. But if the prophecy was true, she could also destroy the world. Queen Seraphine pointed toward Lyra again desperately. "You still hesitate?" she shouted at Kale. "Look at her. She's becoming a monster." Silver fire instantly burst across the throne hall walls in response to Seraphine's words. The awakened dragons outside roared furiously. Lyra grabbed her head painfully. "I can't control it." The more afraid she became, the stronger the celestial power inside her grew. Kyle immediately stepped in front of the furious nobles before someone attacked her again. "Leave," he ordered coldly. The nobles froze. "Your Majesty." "Now." His voice shook the entire chamber. One by one, the terrified nobles fled the throne hall alongside the priests and guards. Even Seraphine slowly backed away, though hatred burned visibly in her eyes. Soon, Only 4 remained inside the ruined chamber. Kyle, Lyra, the High Priest, and the Heart Beast. Outside, dragonfire illuminated the dark sky like the end of the world. The old priest finally spoke quietly. There is only one way to stop the Crimson Tyrant. Kale turned sharply. What way? The priest hesitated fearfully before looking toward Lyra. The Celestial Queen must complete the ancient bond. Lyra lifted trembling eyes. What bond? The High Priest swallowed hard. Long ago, the celestial dragon rulers shared their souls with the ancient dragons. That connection allowed them to command dragonkind itself. Kale's expression darkened. And the price? The priest looked away. The human soul slowly disappears. Silence filled the hall. Lyra's blood ran cold. You mean I die? Not immediately, the priest answered weakly. But eventually the dragon's spirit consumes the human heart completely. Kael's jaw tightened instantly. No. The answer surprised everyone, even himself. The High Priest blinked. Your Majesty, if the bond is not completed, the tyrant cannot be controlled. Another monstrous roar echoed across the kingdom. This time, the palace towers themselves trembled. The Crimson Tyrant was close, very close. Suddenly, Lyra's eyes widened as another memory surfaced. Not from the past, from the future. She saw the capital burning beneath crimson fire. She saw dragons tearing apart the kingdom. She saw Kale standing alone before the tyrant, while blood covered his armor. Then she saw herself, not human anymore. A colossal celestial dragon made of silver flame descending from the sky. The tyrant bowed before her, but behind her, the world burned. Lyra's breathing shook violently. The prophecy, she whispered. Kale looked at her immediately. What did you see? Tears filled her eyes. I destroy everything. The throne hall fell silent. The High Priest slowly lowered his head in despair. The prophecy was true. Kale stared at Lyra for several long seconds. Then he stepped closer carefully. You saw one future, he said quietly. Not the only future. Lyra looked at him in disbelief. You don't understand, she whispered painfully. Every dragon obeys me now. If I lose control, you won't. His answer came instantly. Certain. For some reason, Kyle believed it. Even after everything. Even knowing she could become the end of his kingdom. The heart beast lowered itself beside them both silently, almost approving. Lyra stared into the Dragon King's eyes, and suddenly realized something terrifying. The cold ruler she feared most was becoming the only thing keeping her human. Before either of them could speak again, a deafening explosion tore through the palace walls. The entire throne hall shattered violently as crimson fire erupted into the chamber. Screams echoed outside. Then a massive claw crashed through the royal fortress itself. The Crimson Tyrant had arrived. Its enormous burning eye appeared through the destroyed wall and locked directly onto Lyra. The ancient monster smiled. Finally. My queen. The Crimson Tyrant's eye alone was larger than the throne room itself. Burning crimson light flooded the shattered palace, while molten fire dripped from the ancient dragon's scales like blood from a living nightmare. Its enormous claw crushed the royal fortress walls effortlessly, as terrified screams echoed throughout the capital below. The kingdom's strongest defenses meant nothing before this creature. Lyra couldn't breathe. The moment the tyrant looked at her, she felt something ancient awaken fully inside her soul. The silver fire surrounding her wings intensified violently, while countless dragon voices screamed inside her mind at once. Queen, here, command us. The pressure became unbearable. Kale stepped protectively in front of her immediately, black flames igniting across his sword. The Crimson Tyrant laughed, a deep, terrifying sound that shook the mountains. You would protect her? The monster growled. Your bloodline butchered hers. Every word carried enough force to crack the palace floor. The heart beast roared furiously beside Kyle, standing between the tyrant and Lyra, despite the overwhelming difference in size. The ancient monster barely acknowledged it. My child, the tyrant mocked coldly. You still serve false kings? The heartbeast snarled louder. Kale narrowed his eyes. Why do you want her? The Crimson Tyrant slowly lowered its gigantic head closer to the throne hall. Because she is mine. Silver fire exploded around Lyra instantly. She screamed as another buried memory surfaced violently. This time, she remembered everything. Thousands of years ago, before the fall of the Celestial clan, the Crimson Tyrant had not been their enemy. It had been their guardian, the strongest dragon ever born, bound directly to the first Celestial Queen. But during the War of Ashes, human kings betrayed the Celestial rulers and corrupted the tyrant using forbidden blood magic. The ancient dragon went mad and nearly destroyed the world before being sealed beneath the abyss. And now, it believed Lyra could free it completely. The vision shattered. Lyra stared at the monster in horror. You're trying to use me. The tyrant's burning eyes narrowed. No. Its voice shook the heavens. I am trying to restore what was stolen. Outside the palace, dragons across the kingdom roared in response. Some bowed toward Lyra. Others bowed toward the tyrant. Dragonkind itself was dividing. The high priest suddenly spoke in terror. The celestial bond. If she merges with the tyrant, she'll become unstoppable. Kale's expression darkened immediately. How unstoppable? The old man looked pale. She could command every dragon in existence. Silence. Then the priest whispered the final horror, and no human army would ever survive her. The Crimson Tyrant smiled slowly. Exactly. Suddenly, crimson fire exploded through the throne room walls as the ancient dragon reached toward Lyra with one massive claw. Lyra! Kale shouted. The Dragon King moved instantly. Black flames erupted around him as he leapt directly toward the tyrant's claw with his sword raised high. The impact shook the entire capital. Kale's blade pierced deep into the dragon's burning scales. For the first time, the tyrant roared in pain. Shock spread across the throne hall. Even the ancient dragon seemed surprised. You can wound it, the high priest gasped. Kale landed hard against the broken marble floor, blood running from his arm. The Crimson Tyrant stared down at him with growing interest. A descendant of shadow fire. The monster's eyes narrowed dangerously. So the royal bloodline still carries the forbidden flame. Lyra's heart pounded. Forbidden flame? But before she could ask, the tyrant attacked again. A wall of crimson fire erupted toward the throne hall. The heartbeast shielded Lyra immediately, while Kale raised his sword against the blast. The explosion destroyed half the palace. Stone towers collapsed across the capital as dragon fire consumed the royal fortress entirely. Far below, citizens screamed while dragons battled across the sky above the burning city. The Dragon Kingdom was becoming a war zone. Through the flames and destruction, Lyra saw Kale collapse to one knee. The crimson fire had burned through his armor. Blood spread across his side rapidly. Her chest tightened painfully. Without thinking, she ran toward him. Kyle. The moment she touched him, silver light exploded between them. The entire battlefield froze. Every dragon stopped moving. Even the Crimson Tyrant stared in shock. Ancient celestial symbols appeared beneath Lyra and Kale across the shattered throne floor, while silver chains of light wrapped around both their bodies. The high priest's face lost all color. No. Lyra looked down in confusion as glowing marks spread across her hands. What's happening? The priest trembled. The mating bond. Silence swallowed the ruined palace. Kale slowly lifted stunned eyes toward Lyra. The celestial magic binding them together burned brighter and brighter. The heartbeast lowered itself instantly before them, and outside the palace, every dragon in the kingdom bowed at once. The Crimson Tyrant stared at the glowing bond silently. Then the ancient monster whispered the words that changed everything. The Dragon King is her fated mate. The entire kingdom fell silent. Dragons froze midair above the burning capital, while silver light poured endlessly from the celestial bond connecting Lyra and Kale. Ancient runes spiraled around them across the shattered throne hall floor, illuminating the ruins like divine fire. The Dragon King and the Celestial Queen stood bound together before every dragon alive. Even the Crimson Tyrant looked stunned. "No," Queen Seraphine whispered from the palace entrance, horror filling her face. "That's impossible." But the ancient magic surrounding them could not lie. Lyra felt it. The bond. Not merely emotion, not attraction. Something far deeper. She could suddenly feel Kael's heartbeat inside her own chest. His pain, his exhaustion, the loneliness he had buried for years beneath the cold mask of a king. And Kael felt her fear, her confusion, the unbearable weight crushing her beneath destiny she never asked for. The connection was overwhelming. Kael slowly looked down at the glowing mark now burned into his wrist, the symbol of the celestial mating bond. The same mark had appeared on Lyra. The Crimson Tyrant finally spoke again. "So this is why the Heartbeast chose her," the ancient dragon rumbled. "Shadow fire and celestial blood reunited at last." The high priest looked terrified. "Your Majesty, the prophecy." Kael's eyes remained fixed on Lyra. "What about it?" The priest swallowed hard. The full prophecy was hidden from the royal family. Silence filled the ruined hall. Then the old man recited the forbidden words tremblingly. "When celestial flame joins shadow fire, the false throne shall fall, the chained dragons shall rise, and the world will either be reborn or reduced to ash." Outside the capital, thunder shook the heavens. The prophecy was unfolding, exactly as foretold. Lyra's breathing trembled. "Reborn or destroyed," she whispered. The Crimson Tyrant lowered its massive head closer. "The choice belongs to you now, my queen." Suddenly, thousands of dragon voices echoed inside Lyra's mind simultaneously. She could feel every dragon across the kingdom. Their rage, their suffering, centuries of chains and war forced upon them by human kings. The pain nearly broke her. "Their suffering," Lyra whispered painfully. Kael immediately noticed the blood running from her nose again. The dragon connection was overwhelming her human body. Without hesitation, he stepped closer and grabbed her gently before she collapsed. The celestial bond flared brighter instantly. Silver and black flames intertwined around them beautifully. The Heartbeast rumbled softly beside them, and for one brief moment in the middle of chaos and destruction, Lyra felt safe. Kael looked directly into her eyes. "Listen to me carefully," he said quietly. The world around them continued burning. Dragons roared overhead, but his voice remained calm. "You are not the monster from the prophecy." Lyra stared at him shakily. "You don't know that." "No," Kael admitted. "But I know this kingdom made monsters out of fear long before you were born." His words hit her harder than she expected, because deep down, she knew he was speaking about himself too. Kael had inherited a throne built upon lies, bloodshed, and fear. Yet despite everything, he spared her life years ago, and now he stood against an ancient dragon to protect her. The Crimson Tyrant suddenly growled impatiently. "Enough." Crimson flames exploded around the palace again. The ancient dragon's burning eyes locked onto Kael. "The Shadow King weakens her." Kael slowly raised his sword again despite his injuries. "Try taking her from me." The tyrant's smile widened. Then, the monster attacked. The palace exploded as crimson fire consumed the throne hall entirely. Kael instantly shielded Lyra with his body, while the Heartbeast collided violently against the tyrant outside the fortress. The impact shattered towers across the capital. Dragons throughout the sky joined the battle immediately. Silver dragons attacked the tyrant. Shadow dragons defended Kael. The heavens themselves became a battlefield of fire and blood. Lyra watched in horror as the Heartbeast was thrown violently through the palace walls by the tyrant's enormous claws. The black dragon crashed into the city below. Citizens screamed. Kael wiped blood from his mouth and stood again. But the celestial bond allowed Lyra to feel the truth. He was weakening fast. The forbidden shadow fire burning inside his blood was killing him. The tyrant noticed too. Your mate dies already, little queen. Lyra's heart stopped. What? The high priest looked devastated. The royal shadow fire gives dragon kings power, he explained weakly. But every generation it slowly consumes them from within. Kael said nothing. That silence confirmed everything. Lyra suddenly understood why he always looked so cold, so tired, so empty. The throne itself was killing him. The Crimson Tyrant spread its enormous wings across the burning sky. Join with me, Celestial Queen, and I will save him. Kael's eyes darkened instantly. Don't listen. But the tyrant continued. I can purge the shadow fire from his blood. I can save your king. Lyra froze. For the first time since awakening her powers, she hesitated, and the Crimson Tyrant smiled, because it knew exactly where to strike. The capital burned beneath a sky filled with battling dragons. Crimson flames and silver lightning tore through the heavens, while shattered palace towers collapsed into the streets below. Citizens fled through smoke and destruction as the roar of ancient beasts echoed across the mountains. At the center of it all stood Lyra, the girl who now held the fate of the world in her hands. The Crimson Tyrant's burning eyes remained fixed on her. Join with me. And the Dragon King lives. Kael immediately stepped in front of her despite blood pouring from his wounds. You will not touch her. The ancient dragon laughed darkly, proud until the end. Suddenly, Kael staggered violently. Black fire spread briefly beneath his skin before fading again. The celestial bond instantly transferred his pain into Lyra's chest, making her gasp. The high priest lowered his eyes sadly. The shadow flame is consuming his heart faster now. Lyra stared at Kael in horror. He had known all along. Every battle, every use of his power, every year on the throne. The shadow fire was slowly killing him. Yet he never told anyone. Kael wiped blood from his mouth coldly. It changes nothing. But Lyra could feel the lie through their bond. He was dying. Soon, the Crimson Tyrant lowered its enormous head closer. The false kings enslaved dragons for centuries using shadow fire stolen from forbidden magic. Its voice shook the ruined palace. That curse destroys every ruler who carries it. The ancient dragon's burning eyes narrowed toward Kael. You were doomed from birth. For a brief second, something flickered across Kael's expression. Pain. Real pain. Lyra suddenly remembered the lonely child from her visions. A boy raised to become a weapon long before he ever became king. The throne had chained him, just as surely as the dragons. The tyrant turned back toward Lyra. But you can save him. Silver fire trembled around her wings. How? She whispered. The monster smiled slowly. Complete the celestial bond with me. The high priest's face went pale. No. If she merges with the tyrant completely, she may lose herself forever. The ancient dragon ignored him. The celestial bloodline was created to command dragons. The queen and the first dragon were once one soul divided into two forms. Lyra's heart pounded. She could feel the truth hidden within the words. The tyrant was not entirely lying. A connection already existed between them. Ancien, powerful, terrifying. Join with me, the monster whispered again, and I will save your mate. Refuse, and watch him burn from within. Kael grabbed Lyra's wrist immediately. Do not listen to it. Their eyes met. Through the celestial bond, Lyra could feel his fear now. Not fear of death, fear of losing her. You would rather die? She whispered shakily. Kael answered instantly. Yes. The word shattered something inside her. Because she knew he meant it. He would rather let the shadow fire consume him than risk turning her into a monster. Outside the ruined palace, the battle worsened. The heart beast crashed violently into the tyrant again, trying desperately to slow the ancient dragon. But the size difference was overwhelming. The black dragon roared in pain as crimson claws tore through its scales. The city below continued burning. More people were dying every minute. Lyra closed her eyes, trembling. The prophecy, the dragons, the kingdom, Kael. Everything was falling apart around her. Then suddenly, another vision struck. But this time, it was different. She saw herself joining with the tyrant. Saw silver and crimson flames merging together. Saw Kale collapse as the shadow curse vanished from his body. Saw dragons kneeling peacefully beneath a reborn kingdom. But then, the vision changed. The celestial power continued growing until Lyra herself disappeared inside it. Her humanity burned away completely. And in the end, only the Dragon Queen remained. A godlike creature ruling a silent world, where humans knelt in fear beneath dragon wings forever. Lyra opened her eyes in horror. The tyrant saw the truth on her face. "You understand now." Tears filled Lyra's eyes. "If I save him, I lose myself." The monster remained silent. That silence was answer enough. Kale gently grabbed her face, forcing her to look at him. "Listen carefully," he said quietly. The world shook around them. Flames surrounded the ruined palace, but his voice remained steady. "You are not responsible for saving everyone." Lyra's lips trembled. "But people are dying, and more will die if you become what the prophecy fears." The celestial bond pulsed painfully between them. Kale leaned his forehead against hers softly. "If I must die to keep you human," he whispered, "then that is a price I will gladly pay." Lyra's heart shattered completely. The Crimson Tyrant roared furiously. "Foolish king." The ancient dragon's flames erupted across the capital again. But before the monster could attack, the heart beast suddenly rose into the sky once more. Wounded, blading, yet still fighting. The black dragon landed between the tyrant and the palace, roaring defiantly despite its injuries. Then, something impossible happened. The heart beast turned toward Lyra and bowed, not to a queen, not to a ruler, but to its chosen heart. A voice echoed gently inside Lyra's soul. "You are not meant to rule dragons through fear." Silver tears rolled down Lyra's face. "You are meant to set them free." The celestial fire around her wings suddenly changed. No longer violent, no longer unstable. For the first time, the power obeyed her willingly. And high above the burning kingdom, the stars themselves began to shine through the storm. Silver starlight broke through the burning sky. For the first time since the Crimson Tyrant awakened, the storm clouds above the kingdom began to part. Moonlight spilled across the ruined capital, while dragons circling overhead slowly lifted their heads toward Lyra. Something had changed. The celestial power surrounding her no longer felt wild or destructive. It felt calm. Ancien, pure. The Crimson Tyrant immediately sensed it. Its massive crimson eyes narrowed dangerously. Impossible. Lyra slowly rose to her feet within the shattered throne hall. Silver fire flowed gently around her glowing wings like liquid moonlight, while the celestial bond between her and Kale pulsed steadily beneath her skin. No pain, no chaos, only clarity. The heart beast remained bowed before her, blood dripping from its wounds onto the broken marble floor. And then, on a one, the dragons battling across the capital stopped fighting. The silver dragons, the shadow dragons, even the ancient beasts awakened from beneath the mountains. All of them turned toward Lyra, waiting. The high priest stared in disbelief. "She's stabilizing the celestial flame." Kyle watched her silently, and for the first time since meeting her, he no longer saw a frightened servant girl. He saw a queen, not because dragons bowed to her, but because, despite everything, the betrayal, the fear, the prophecy, the power, she still refused to become cruel. The Crimson Tyrant roared violently. "You cannot deny your nature forever." Crimson fire exploded outward from the ancient dragon, consuming entire palace towers instantly. The monster spread its colossal wings across the sky as rage shook the heavens themselves. The world betrayed dragonkind. Humans chained us, slaughtered us, feared us. The ancient dragon's voice thundered across the kingdom. They deserved to kneel. For a brief moment, silence followed. Then, Lyra finally spoke. No, her voice was soft, but every dragon heard it. The tyrant froze. Lyra stepped forward slowly, silver flames illuminating the ruined palace around her. "You were hurt," she said quietly. "You were betrayed." The Crimson Tyrant's burning eyes narrowed. "But pain does not give you the right to become a monster." The words struck the ancient dragon harder than any blade, because deep inside the tyrant's fury, a wounded creature still remained. The same guardian dragon that once protected the celestial queens. The same dragon corrupted by hatred and war. Lyra's silver wings spread wider. "You said dragons were chained," she continued. "Then let the chains end today." Suddenly, celestial light erupted across the entire kingdom. Ancient runes hidden beneath the mountains began glowing brilliantly, while enormous chains buried deep within the dragon tombs shattered one after another. The dragons were being freed. Not commanded. Freed. Shock spread through every creature in the sky. Even the heart beast slowly lifted its head in disbelief. The Crimson Tyrant stared at Lyra silently. "You would release us without demanding obedience?" Lyra looked directly into its burning eyes. Freedom given through fear is not freedom. The celestial fire surrounding her expanded outward like moonlight across the kingdom itself. Everywhere, the silver light touched. The ancient control magic used by the royal bloodline dissolved into ash. The chains binding dragonkind for centuries vanished. And something incredible happened. The dragons did not attack humanity. They simply stopped fighting. Thousands of enormous creatures slowly descended across the mountains and skies surrounding the capital in complete silence. The war ended. The Crimson Tyrant trembled slightly. For the first time in thousands of years, the ancient dragon no longer heard chains inside its soul. Kyle stared at Lyra with quiet awe. She had accomplished what no king ever could. Not through power, through compassion. The tyrant slowly lowered its enormous head before her. "Not in submission, in respect. You truly are the Celestial Queen." Tears filled Lyra's eyes. Then suddenly, the crimson fire surrounding the tyrant began weakening rapidly. The corruption consuming the ancient dragon was fading, but something else was happening too. Its massive body was beginning to crumble into ash. The high priest gasped. The seal. The tyrant's ancient eyes softened slightly as it looked at Lyra. "I was never meant to survive freedom." Lyra stepped forward desperately. "No." But the dragon interrupted gently. "I have carried hatred for too long." For the first time, its voice no longer sounded monstrous, only tired. The tyrant slowly turned toward Kyle. "Protect her well, Shadow King." Then the ancient dragon looked back toward the stars above the kingdom and smiled. The colossal creature dissolved slowly into crimson embers that scattered across the night sky like burning stars. The Crimson Tyrant was gone. Silence spread across the mountains. Then, every dragon in the kingdom roared together, not in war, but in mourning. Lyra stood frozen beneath the falling crimson embers while tears rolled down her face. Kale approached her quietly. The celestial bond between them glowed softly now, warm and steady. "You saved them," he said. Lyra shook her head gently. "We saved them." Kale looked at her for several long seconds. Then, finally, the Dragon King knelt before the servant girl the kingdom once feared. Not because prophecy demanded it, not because dragons watched, but because his heart already belonged to her completely. And across the kingdom, the people slowly began kneeling too. Not before a ruler born from fear, but before the queen who ended an age of chains.